Welcome, everyone. Wow, there's a lot of you here. I know some of you. I'm very honored to be here in this wonderful company, such elevated souls. So thank you for having me. I don't generally prepare things. When I get messages, it's just that I'm in prayer or in a deep meditation, both, and things come through. But since many of you don't know me, I should probably give you a little bit of background, which is also in the book, The Path of Roses. So I grew up in Chicagoland, and my parents were Catholics, and they wanted me to become a priest, and they sent me to Catholic schools, and my mother grew roses in the garden, and I was always very attracted to roses for some reason. And they had me on the trajectory of becoming a Catholic priest. And so I did go to seminary and monasteries and did retreats and so on. They weren't too happy when I told them I had a girlfriend. But we moved past that. And as I got into high school, I got introduced to Madame Blavatsky's stuff, the Theosophical Society, the writings of George Gurdjieff and Ouspensky, which led me to the Sufis, which led me to Swami Rama, who was maybe the first guru I actually physically met, who was a lovely soul, which led me to many other gurus. And I kind of became a practical Hindu for the next 20 years. And I studied a lot of different things, including esoteric Christianity, the books of Yogananda, and had many experiences as a Hindu with various gurus, including what those of you who might know the term Shaktipat, which is what the Hindus call the spiritual transmission of energy. And some of these teachers, these gurus, are very powerful people. They can really zap you, which is not to say that teachers in all religions or philosophies don't have some kind of energy. But I practiced meditation and yoga for many years, and I had many manifestations, out-of-body things, experiences, energies. And I came to a point where I was sitting with one of these gurus, with about a couple hundred people were sitting in this large hall. And we were supposed to meditate on this particular teacher because he was the divine incarnation, as he called himself. And I sat there and I didn't feel anything. In fact, I thought the whole thing was rather amusing. And but I couldn't leave. So I just prayed. And my soul asked to just connect with God. And I felt this inflowing of love that persisted for weeks. And I left and I never went back. And many years later, I met someone who introduced me to angels, who was a Christian, but a very monotheistic Christian, which is to say a non-Trinitarian, who talked to me about divine love and said the angels talked to her. And I had a lot of questions because I was kind of not very keen on Christianity at that point. And so I had questions, and she said, well, there's no Trinity, and Jesus doesn't like people worshiping him as God, but he says when you pray to him, your prayers go directly to God anyway, so it's okay. And Mary was no virgin. She had 8 children, and she talks to me all the time. And she told me all these things, and I thought, well, this is very interesting. I said, what about the Holy Spirit? What's that? He said, well, there's no Trinity, but the Holy Spirit is the active energy of God's soul. that when you ask to receive love or a connection with God's soul, his spirit puts that love into your soul. And I thought, that's really terrific. I like that. That sounds a lot better than 3 people in one and the blood sacrifice and all this stuff. So I said, so the angels talk to you? And she said, yeah, would you like to go and see where? And I said, sure. So we were in Austin, Texas. And she said, do you have a car? And I said, yes. So we get in my car and she sits in the back seat, a very lovely woman. I thought, well, this is obviously not a date. So we're in the car and we're driving outside of Austin to, in those days, which was just scrub, hilly scrub country, mesquite cactus and kind of rolling hills. Maybe it looks a bit like the Holy Land, actually. And on the way there, she has a prayer. And it's just a beautiful prayer, just asking us to be in harmony, to be in love. Nothing very dogmatic about it at all. And I felt the car was just floating along. So I thought, wow, this is really good. This is, wow, how wonderful. And I had been kind of depressed, I should add, before that. And I felt that all these years of meditation and doing yoga hadn't actually been transformational. They've been lovely when you're in meditation. It's calm, peaceful. So I had prayed the week before. I got rid of all the pictures of the gurus and whatnot. And I had just asked for God to send me somebody special. So little did I know it was going to be this person. But we drive outside of Austin and we're in the country. And then we drive up a driveway and the moon is out, but there's no lights out there. And we get out and I start walking towards this house. And she said, no, not over here. We're going to go over here on the side of the house, which was a beautiful lawn with some pine trees. And okay. So I'm very much trusting this person by now because I'm feeling nothing but grace and love. And we go and there's a grassy part and she kind of gets into a yoga kind of prayer thing where you kind of sit on your legs. And so wanting to be respectful, I do the same. And I'm a few feet away from her. And she again starts another prayer. It's just very Heavenly Father, we ask for your love and the guidance of your angels, whatever it was. So I'm closing my eyes and I'm listening to this prayer. And all of a sudden there's a light flickering and I'm thinking somebody must be shining a flashlight on me or whatever. And so I look up and there were these 2 beings, maybe 20 feet tall, 18 feet, I don't know. And there was a man and a woman. They were made out of light and they did not have wings, but they were wearing robes. And he had a bit of long hair and a beard and she was just a beautiful woman. And I was terrified. I didn't know if I was going to get abducted by aliens or what, you know. And so I closed my eyes and I could still see them. Now I'm peed in my pants probably by this time. And I felt them come up to me and they put their hands on my shoulders and I could feel them. And the man said, don't be afraid. We love you. Don't be afraid. God loves you. Go in peace. And they left. And I could just feel this beautiful, what I would call divine love, flowing through my body. So that was a transformational point for me for going from maybe what you want to call the natural love, human love, to making a connection to what some will call source, some will call God, whatever word you want to use for the creator. And I asked that woman that night if she would marry me, and she said yes. And we spent the next 4 years together. and had many, many miracles, which we don't have time for, and I don't want you to fall asleep on me, so I won't go into them all, but they're in the book, some of them, and in my journey from childhood. And so we had just these fabulous 4 years and many, many roses, and that was kind of her thing as well. We had to have roses when we went, and there are stories in the book about that. But she also told me how she was going to die, and said it was in a fiery car crash, and people died. And she died in a fiery car crash, and 4 people died. And that's, I have no idea how she knew that, but she was kind of a very extraordinary person, and her name was Care. So after she passed, I really was grieving, but also knew that I could make a connection somehow. And I went to see evidential mediums who would get messages from her and other people. And I knew that she had read books by James Paget, who was a guy who got messages from 1914 to 1924, so not very different than the lady that you mentioned earlier, or Robert J. Lees, or Reverend Owen, all in the early 1900s. They all got messages, and they're all very similar about the spirit world, about progression in the love of God, about who Jesus really is, just very informational. And so I had read that, and I became a minister in a Divine Love church. And I started going to prayer circles and whatnot. And people would get messages. And they were defined as celestial mediums. So there's evidential mediumship, which I'm sure just about everybody in this group knows what that is. And there are probably many celestial or evidential mediums in this group, and I love them. But these people were described as celestial mediums. So they would get messages from what they would call celestial angels, transformed souls. And so that was my interest, because I had felt this love that felt transformational rather than just a moment of grace. And at one point, I started meeting with different people around the world. And one of them was my friend Al Fike, who some of you may know, and he's an internationally recognized celestial medium. He's an author of several books. I believe he's spoken to this group a few times at least. And so I was with Al one time, and we had a retreat, and it didn't go all that well. And we were in California, and I said, are you going down to LA or anything? He said, we're going to San Diego. I said, great. Can I get a ride? Because I have a stepson in San Diego. And I also wanted to go to the Yogananda Center in Encinitas, which is just next to San Diego. And I had been there with other people and meditated and really felt grace and love. So Al didn't know anything about Yogananda. He's not a biblical guy. He's not a yoga guy. He's just a medium. And he's extraordinary, but he doesn't know much about these people. And he said, well, I said, there's a beautiful garden there, Al. Al, being a gardener, said, okay, we'll go. So we go down, and we don't make it in time to go to the center. So we get a motel, and we stay overnight. And that night, I have a dream, and Yogananda comes to me. This is very unusual for me at this time. And he says, if you come to my garden, I'll be there. And I thought, wow, okay. So I have breakfast with Al and Jean, and I said, Yogananda came to me in a dream last night. And he said, if you come to my garden, I'll be there. And Al said, okay, great, well, we'll go. It'd be nice. And Jean's like, well, his wife Jean is like, well, we have a bunch of people to see in San Diego, so can we just make it quick? Maybe like just a quick trip to the garden? Yeah, okay, fine. So we drive over there, we get a parking space right in front of the entrance. We walk in, And Jean is having trouble walking, so she kind of has some walking sticks. And the guy comes up, the manager, and he gives us a big hug. And he says, you know, you should go up the path that Yogananda took when he got older, because I think it's a little bit too steep for you. So we're kind of getting really beautiful treatment. And we walk up to the top, and there are some people in prayer and meditation. And you can really feel grace there. And Al is loving all the flora and fauna, and there's fishes. And so we're up there for an hour or so. Nobody's talked about leaving and going anywhere. But Al says, where did you guys have your prayer with when you come here with your friends? I said, oh, that's over in the St. Francis grotto. So we walk over there. Nobody's there. So the three of us sit down, and we have a prayer, and Al gets a message. And I am here, Yogananda. And he's telling Al, I know you don't think that I have this love, that we're on the same path, but we are. We may have had a different language for it, but we are. And I'm really glad my brother brought you here to my garden so you could enjoy it, and so on and so forth. And then we got a message from Francis, St. Francis, which is his grotto. And he says, gardens are wonderful places to meditate, to get healed. I encourage you to make them and go to them. Okay, so to make a really long story a little shorter, Al starts getting messages from Yogananda now and then, and he tells me, Jimbeau, Yogananda wants to speak through you. And I said, I don't get messages, Al. He said, no, he's going to speak to you, and you're going to write a book. And I said, that's great, fine, you know. And he kept on it, and I just disregarded it. I thought it sounded ridiculous. I said, well, you know, I get music. I hear music and I write songs, but, you know, I don't get that kind of stuff. So about 2 years later, on my birthday in 2019, I get woken up by this voice, and it's telling me he's Yogananda, and he wants to talk to me. And this is in the book, the message I got. So I thought it was really strange, and I recorded it on my phone coming through me. And we're having an argument, kind of. He said, you and I are not that different. I'm like, yeah, right. And he said, no, my mother was a very devoted Hindu, and she went to temple every day and did puja and took me. And my parents wanted me to take this path. And your parents wanted you to become a priest, and your mother went to church every day, and you were an altar boy, right? And I said, yeah. And so he went through a litany of different things, why we were somewhat similar. And I was just shocked by it all. And I didn't really tell anyone. But a few days later, I was back in Canada, and I was at Al and Jean's place. And we're having a prayer session. So we go into the sanctuary there, and we're having a prayer, and I hear this voice. And it's Yogananda. And he says, I want to speak through you. And this is a silent conversation, as you may know. And I'm saying, no, I'm not doing that. He goes, no, I want to speak to you. It's okay. It'll be all right. And I said, no. So I make a deal with him internally. I said, well, I'm not comfortable with that. I said, and I don't wish to be dismissive, but if you'll speak through this other medium who's here, this guy Al, I'll agree to take messages from you. All this in silence, of course. About 30 seconds later, Al goes, I am here, Yogananda. And I'm sorry my reluctant brother doesn't wish to take a message, but I will do so. And he gives a message. So I got busted. That was the beginning of a whole new journey, which some of it I put in this book. This is the book if you're interested. I don't know if you can see it. Anyways, The Path of Roses. So since that time, I've received hundreds of messages. The book contains messages from 2019 to 2022. And there's a variety of people, some that I am aware of and some that I wasn't. I'll give you a brief overview. Francis of Assisi, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, Khalil Gibran, Gurdjieff, Hafiz, Fred Rogers, Moses, Mary Magdalene, Jesus, Luke, Mahatma Gandhi, White Eagle, Hazrat Inayat Khan, Thomas Merton, Yogananda, of course, Care, and several others. They're in the book. And so this goes to 2022, and since then I've received a bunch of new messages, and some from other people that are not in the book. And I thought maybe if you'll indulge me, maybe I'll read one or two, if that's okay. Do we have time for that, Wendy?
Yes, we do. Absolutely.
Okay. So this one maybe everyone can relate to. These are all spirits. Most are celestials, but some are just on a path of being transformed souls from the image, the soul being made in the image, to the very substance of in God's love. As Jesus, what did he say? I am one with the Father as you can be one with the Father in the God's love. I'm paraphrasing, but that's pretty much what he said. So this book really is about anyone with an open heart, an open soul seeking to be transformed and asking the Creator, however you view that, to infill your soul with love. So that's really what the book is about. Here's a message I got May 4th, 2019, from Charlie Chaplin, of all people. I am here, Charles Chaplin, Charlie. How I love to speak the truth and expose untruth with humor while on earth. It might take an Irishman to understand my ways, both spiritually and politically, as I was a nonconformist with a vision. I could envision ways to tell a story that touched the heart and tickled the funny bone, and so I made movies. As you may know, my movies cover the themes of social justice, poverty, workers' rights, tyrants, and romantic love. I believed in love, and that one should smile even if your heart is breaking. I love it that the song Smile still strikes a resounding chord with so many. I loved music and poetry and acting while on earth. I find that here in spirit my passions continue, with the addition of my progressing from an agnostic to an absolute belief in God and his love for us. I am not a celestial spirit, but I am on the path of divine love. Thanks to my mother, always a believer who had an unflinching faith while on earth that lifted her spirit into the celestial kingdom. She never gave up on me, even when I so wished to give up on myself. Her mental illness on earth had no power in the spirit world and was dissipated in the light that was her soul. She was my guide upon crossing over, and I was so thrilled to be reunited with her. And I am endlessly inspired by her stunning luminosity and the wisdom of the truths of the spirit world and God's love. I pray now for my soul to be transformed and awakened in God's love. So, dear friends, if I could tell you one thing I have learned, it would be this: God is love. God's love is the greatest thing in the entire universe. You who have chosen to receive it and believe in it have chosen wisely. I am drawn to your group because of this, and because this instrument has many creative projects in his, shall we say, back pocket. We share a need to express ourselves with humor and with music, and for it to be helpful to others, to serve humanity. I hope to be of service to him in getting as much of what he has received out there as possible. He has made some great efforts at times to do this, but the timing wasn't right. It is now. We shall work together, and I shall guide him through his doubts and mindset failures that have paralyzed him, as they often did me. Let there be love. Let there be light. Let the music soar, and laughter and joy abound. Oh, how the world needs you. God bless you. I love you, Charles. I'm going to need some water. So, I could read others if you wish, or I could take some questions that I may or may not be able to answer. But that's the book. I consider the book, in retrospect, when I was getting these messages, I often thought not much of them. I don't really know what's coming through half the time. And so reading them much later as the book was putting together, I was very happy to see that they had contained a lot of what I would call practical spiritual advice for anybody on any path. So it's not an extremely intellectual book. It's more of a book of the heart. And the Path of the Roses is, you could say, the path of the heart that leads to the soul. So I don't know how much time we have or anything. I can read more messages, or if you have questions, please
Let's
go
have
ahead.
a couple more.
Oh, here's one that was probably what Al Fike was talking about when he said Yogananda wanted to speak through me, because it's about meditation and prayer and the differences. This message, January 14th, 2020. I wish to explain the differences and similarities in meditation and prayer. These things, sometimes separate, can also be one and the same. In traditional Eastern meditation, one is taught to go within, to let the mind go, to find the stillness in the center of one's being, in the heart chakra, to relax the body completely, but maintain awareness. In this place there is peace, there is oneness. In my own teaching, where I presented Kriya Yoga, learned through my teacher Sri Yukteswar, I focused on this going within and allowing the body to be a vessel of light, opening each chakra so that it was as if there were a beam of light extending from the lowest chakra all the way up to the Sahasrara or crown chakra into the heavens. I presented this in a very scientific way, and this method in the West became very well known back in my day. Many thousands of people tried this approach with great success, finding great peace, feeling the light, feeling the oneness with the cosmic forces and the consciousness of love pervading their being. I must confess my own meditation was a bit different. I went within, of course, and I experienced tremendous bliss and energies in being at one with the cosmos, and often had visions through my third eye or sixth chakra, as you know. But I also spoke to God from the longings in my soul, sometimes just very simply asking for my soul to be at one with God's soul. Other times I would have questions about my work or situations that had arisen, such as my separation from my homeland, and at the beginning of my time in America, wondering, why am I here? How can I possibly be successful at this mission my guru has given me? All these questions were answered in prayer, but also my deep desire in my soul to connect with the Creator brought God's love into my soul and began to transform it. I would always urge my students to talk to God, to think about God all the time. I always gave credit to God, not wanting the focus to be on myself. At no time did I seek to be worshipped as God on earth, but rather as someone who had self-realized what I call Christ consciousness, at oneness with God. Where there are ashrams and monasteries and temples where devotees pray, there is often a rapport created between the heavens and those longing to connect with their Creator, beyond the oneness of feeling one with the universe, into the gloriousness of truly feeling at one in love with the Creator. This is indeed the meaning of the words in the Gospels when Jesus says, I and the Father are one. He did not mean he was God. In the East, when they interpret that wrongly as God incarnate, with Jesus or any other teachers, they are in error. For truly, he was the first divine Son, but there have been others, although he is the greatest. Are we not all children of God, sons and daughters of our Creator who wishes us all to be at one with his essence, which is the divine love? My intention today is to draw a bridge, create a bridge between the meditation of going within and being at one with creation and the universe, and opening up in humbleness to the Creator to receive the great gift, which is given to all who ask. If we take the meditation of going within and the humble prayer of reaching out for the essence of the Creator to be ours, we can call this a divine love meditation, for it is a combination of the two, prayer and meditation. I would encourage you to go within and be calm. Find that place in your heart, in your soul, where there is a beautiful natural love given to all. Allow your mind to become still, your heart to be opened, your body to be at peace. Allow for the longings of your souls to reach the Creator in the humbleness that is required, in the recognition of the Great One. This is truly becoming transformed in Christ consciousness, becoming anointed with the love, being transformed as a soul from the mere image to the at-one-ment with the very substance of God and immortality, eternal life. This is the gift that is offered from our most loving Creator. I encourage you to ask, for you truly shall receive. I thank this one for taking the time to receive this message, which I have longed to give to my students and to the world. May you all be blessed and transformed in God's love. I love you and I thank you. Go in peace. I am your brother and friend in the celestial heavens, Yogananda. Thank you. God bless you.
Jimbo, that is amazing. I think we're all
That was
moved
a
by
long
it.
message.
It was a long message. Yeah. Do you have somebody recording the messages
Yes, some of these, often I receive them during the week in a prayer session with several other people, like this session on Zoom. And someone records them and then sends me the audio. And my beloved grandson, Michael, transcribes them and sends them to me. And if I need to make a few corrections or whatever, I'll make them and then I put them out. And in the last year or so, we do have audio files of a lot of those. I don't know if there's an audio file of that. There should be somewhere.
beautiful.
I thought I would read at least one more and tell you a little bit about, aside from the prayer circles, I often get woken up at 3 or 4 in the morning. And I think this must be a common thing with mediums, because others have told me this. And I would wake up and I had received some messages from Hafiz the poet, who's my favorite poet, and some messages from Khalil Gibran, but not poetry. I just received messages, and they were beautiful messages. I loved them. But I really wished to receive a poem, you know. So I would just be thinking, oh man, I'd really like to get a poem. I don't think I can, but it would be great. So in the book, there are several poems from Hafiz. And maybe I'll read one, but I think I'm going to read a recent poem that's not in the book, because I had never received one from Khalil Gibran. And I really like this. This came in at 4:30 a.m. from a dead sleep. So I just turn on my phone and set it on my chest and mumble whatever comes through, and then later on write it down. So Khalil Gibran, June 25th, 2024. You seek eternity not knowing what it is, yet not wanting what it isn't. For the eternal unfolding of the soul is a timeless masterpiece, the work of an artist who continues to create all things, evolving, all things opening. The number of infinity and singular beauty of one add up to love. For is it not said that God is love? The munificence of wonder ever exceeds the wildest expectation of even the highest angels who lead the way, who light the way. For if not love, none would matter. The promise of reality that an illusionist projects is but the veil over the real. And yet God is the great illusionist, unveiling the realities of his essence through creation, while bestowing it to those wanderers hungry for it. It is a show unending, a promise ever fulfilling, a gift unfolding, endless, endless love, the why and the wherefore of all. I am Khalil.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that was a very strange message to get, but I loved it. I think my brain doesn't understand it, but my soul kind of gets it.
Right. Lovely. Absolutely lovely.
Thank you.
Are you ready for some questions then?
Sure.
Okay.
I don't know if I have any answers, but I'm ready for some questions.
Now, perhaps we'll just get Jean and Al to say hello. Al and Jean are going to be coming and
Oh,
talking to us on the week after next. So, Al, would you like to just perhaps come in and just tell us a little bit about your experiences with Jimbeau?
I've had many experiences with my brother Jimbo. He is truly my brother, a friend. Ever since we've met, we've had many prayers together, many experiences together. And as Jimbo mentioned, I'm the one who kicked him in the butt and said, "You need to open up this gift. It's something that the world could benefit from." And it does give me great pleasure that he has written this book and done this work. He's also a very talented musician and songwriter and many other things. Sorry I came in a bit late, so I might have missed the intro, but he's an incredible guy, and I just feel enriched by knowing him and witnessing his spiritual journey as he witnesses mine. So there is a kind of equality there, a kind of uh, fellowship that hand in hand we're exploring all about divine love and what it means for each one of us. Of course, the thing about divine love is it's a unique experience to each individual. So, how Jimbo navigates this path and how I navigate the path, of course, there's a lot of similarities, but there are differences too. And it depends on our gifts, our abilities, our perception, what our life has been like before that. So the wonderful thing about divine love is it doesn't say this is the path, this is how you must be. It doesn't give a lot of edicts and things that must be followed. It's honoring the individual and honoring the path of the individual towards God. And Jimbo does that. I do it. And there are several people on the screen who do that. And we find great joy in it, great joy and great insight into our lives and the guidance that we receive and the blessings that we get and all of that. And Jimbo is certainly a testimony to that. And his book, like his speaking and his music, it's lyrical. It's not dry at all. It's a lovely story, and if you get a chance to buy it, do so because you'll, if anything, it's entertaining. But most of all, it's got a lot of really powerful truths and messages in there that I think we all could benefit from reading.
Thank you, Al. That's great. Jean, can we get you to come in
thank
and
you.
just say a quick hello?
She's on her phone. I wonder if she can.
Yeah, I'm
That's
on my
Visuals.
phone.
that's
Uh,
okay.
uh, Well, I just want to. Oh, your video is stopped. So sorry, Wendy. Oh, it's such a joy. I was late too, but I echo everything that Al said about Jimbo. He's such a true delight and brother in our journey, and his storytelling is always captivating. And we have lots of stories we could share, but I better not do that on air. But thank you, Wendy, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
In 2 weeks. Thank you, Jane. That's really lovely. All right. Has anybody got some questions? If you'd just like to raise your hand, you know how to use the raise hand at the bottom if you've got something to say.
Elizabeth Mack.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. I just want to mention that as far as his music goes, it is probably the most uplifting and soul-opening music that I've heard in my 75 years. It is worth just listening to because it really helps with the connection to God. And it was a gift from God, and it's a gift to me every time I hear it. Just thought I'd mention that.
Thank you, Elizabeth. How can we hear some of your music, Jimbo?
Well, there is a CD out there, but most people that are over 20 years old or 15 years old don't buy CDs. So it's on Spotify. There's this album or two out there on Spotify. I'll show you a picture. So this came out in 2024, and of course the theme is roses, so it's called, can you see that?
It says Reliable Roses.
Reliable Roses. And so it's on, I guess it's on Amazon and Spotify and all those things. Reliable Roses by me. And yes, they're spiritual songs. They're not necessarily all religious songs or anything. I wouldn't say they're extremely dogmatic. There's even maybe a political song in there somewhere. Or two.
Thank you, Jimbo. I love following you on Facebook, so I know that you do have a few, shall we say, strong political opinions.
This is true. I'm for freedom and democracy.
Wonderful. Daniel.
Yes. Hi, Jimbo. Thanks so much for your presentation. I love communications from known personalities. I really enjoyed your message from Charlie Chaplin, for example. And I work with a team of mediums who very often will get messages from public figures. So I was wondering if you could share some more of those with us.
Oh,
they're great fun, and they tend to bridge beautifully bridge our mundane world with the higher worlds.
Well, yeah, sometimes I guess people are familiar with them. I mean, I remember getting a message from, there's a few people like Hazrat Inyat Khan, who was a musician, and I had listened to his music and read some of his stuff back when I was maybe 20 years old. And he came through one day and he talked about the sound of the voice and how a voice indicates the feelings in your heart and your soul. It was just beautiful. And I hadn't thought about this guy in 40 or 50 years. So, but he was one that most people don't know. Mahatma Gandhi, of course, people know. Thomas Merton, mostly Catholics know, and St. Francis and those folks. I've gotten a few messages from Jesus, and I was very reluctant to get messages from Jesus because so many people around the world have books about the messages they've got from Jesus. And I thought, first of all, I don't want to get a message from Jesus wrong. Right? And I noticed a lot of the messages from different people were not necessarily in complimenting with one another. I would say there are exceptions. Robert James Lees, Albert Fike, James Paget, Reverend Owens, Eileen Caddy to some extent, and so on. But anyways, so, okay, so Daniel, if you're here, anybody you want to hear from in particular?
No, just pick a good one. Interestingly, just as I mentioned the mediums I work with, one of them signed on to this meeting.
Oh,
And that's Regina Ochoa, who lives in Nebraska. And just for Regina's information, Jimbeau has been bringing through a variety of communications, and one of them was from Charlie Chaplin, which was wonderful, and reminded me of all the personalities that you and Jean have brought in and that are on our website. Anyway, so I had just asked Jimbeau if he would bring through another one of these personalities that we all know and love.
oh, well, Charlie, he's pretty well known, as is Yogananda, Mahatma Gandhi, of course. Are people familiar with the poet Hafiz? Yeah, I get a few people shaking their heads. Yeah, he came shortly after Rumi, and most people around the world know who Jalaluddin Rumi is. And I've gotten a couple messages from Rumi, but never a poem. And I love Hafiz so much. I even wrote a song based on a poem that he had called Tiny Gods. But I'd never really received a poem from him. So maybe I'll read something from Hafiz if I can find where he is. Let's see. On page 80. Here's a short one. He talked a bit about, in the earlier ones, he talked a bit about where he grew up and how he wasn't given a Muslim burial because he was considered a heretic. Mm-hmm. And now, of course, his gravesite and Rumi's are the two most popular in all of Islam. So it's interesting how things how they change. Anyways, this is a message from Hafiz, March 13th, 2020. I am here, Hafiz the poet, and you are in your galaxy, a pinpoint in the vast universe of the Creator, living on a microcosmic dot in an expanding universe. And yet there is a beam of light connecting each one to the source. This connection facilitated by love and brought about by each one seeking this love in the spiritual hunt where the prey captures the hunter. Mm-hmm. The Creator in his wisdom makes it possible. How is anything possible? How are we breathing? Living in a world full of darkness and yet full of light, full of death and full of life. You have discovered the majesty of love divine. You have discovered the great treasure that our glorious Creator has given. No one would walk away from such riches. In God's love, I am your friend, Hafiz.
Beautiful.
Thank you. At the other end of the spectrum, how about Fred Rogers? I think someone else asked about him in the chat as well.
If people are not from the U.S., they often don't know who Fred Rogers is. So just briefly, I'll say my kids grew up with Fred Rogers, and he was like Prozac. They could be tearing each other's eyeballs out, and Fred Rogers would come on in his sweater with his shoes. It's a wonderful day in the neighborhood, a beautiful day, won't you? And within 10 minutes, they're like just sitting there calmly watching Fred talk to King Friday or one of the puppets and telling his stories in a very gentle, beautiful way. And so later I found out about Fred Rogers. They've made movies about him now and everything, but I found out that he was an ordained Presbyterian minister. He had two boys, as I had two boys. He was a swimmer, and I swim 5 times a week. So, and I like puppets, but I certainly don't have a TV show and all that. But Fred, I really felt was just such a wonderful soul, and he came to my group. That we have a reading group on Thursdays, and we read from many, many different books. But Fred came through. Let's see if I can find a message from Fred Rogers for you. And thank you for your patience. So this is the very first one I got in a group. I am Fred Rogers. Hello all. Aloha Jimbeau. For those of you who do not know me, I was a minister while on earth, a father, a writer, a composer of music, a swimmer, and the host of a children's TV show. My ministry was directed towards the children of the world. I wish them to feel safe and accepted, and above all, loved. I prayed every night for guidance. I prayed for the blessings of God loves. I did not know of the path of divine love, yet I received it while on earth. This spark in my soul enabled me to teach children, to give them a sense of belonging in a world moving so fast. So we sang, we had puppets and royalty and guests of many colors, many persuasions. I often used someone's occupation, their gender, their race, to point out that we, in fact, are all God's children, all one in love. I work with children now who have crossed over, so my work continues. I am a progressive spirit and an inhabitant of the fifth sphere, as you number them, and a possessor of the great gifts of God's love. I come today not only to introduce myself and my work, but to remind such a beautiful group of souls to remember that your time on earth, however long, is but a blink in the eye of the Creator. What you leave your children and your children's children and the generations to follow is of the utmost importance, for the world so needs love. So I ask you to remember the importance of guiding the children, of being patient with them, of bringing the unity of all peoples, all religions, those who lack religion, and all genders in the oneness of love and in the blessings of God's love. For as is said, we are all God's children and one in his love. I shall step back and join you in your prayer for the love of God. With all my heart, I thank you for allowing me to come today. May God bless you all. I am Fred Rogers.
What a beautiful message. Absolutely lovely.
He had I've received a few from Fred Rogers, but one of them, he talked a bit about his work with children. And he said he often worked with children that were very traumatized or abused or victims of famine or war. And there were many people in his sphere working with children that cross over in such a condition. And it was always a delight when they were able to, I guess, become de-traumatized. I'd have to read the message to know how he put it, but, and it just seems, and then I met my friend Phil Orr in Nashville, who I've just known a couple of years. So I didn't know Phil Orr at all, and I think Gene Fike wrote me, and Gene, you can correct me if I'm wrong, and said, there's a guy in Nashville that wants to meet you, and can I give him your number? And I said, well, give him my email or something, and sure, that'd be nice. And he's been coming to prayer circles or whatever. So I get an email from this guy, Phil, and he said he'd like to have coffee with me and talk to me and about what I do. And I said, okay. So, and he's like a year younger than me, so we're about the same age. And we met at a place, we had a bunch of coffee, and so we talked a lot. And he says at some point, he said, I've been reading your messages, and I've been reading Al Fike's messages and going to these prayer circles. And he said, and it's really nice. He said, but I want to tell you, I read some messages you got from Fred Rogers. And I can tell you about Fred Rogers because I grew up with Fred Rogers. He was a friend of my family. In fact, my father taught him at divinity school, and where he became Reverend Fred Rogers. And he bought our family a TV so we could watch his show, and he gave my sister piano lessons and all the stuff. So he said, so I know Fred Rogers, and I'm kind of swallowing, going, oh boy. And he said, and I've read your messages from Fred Rogers. And I said, yeah. And he said, and I can tell you, they're definitely from Fred Rogers, and he would be working with children. That's exactly what he'd be doing, and the way he talks. And I was just so relieved, that he didn't think they were horrible or not real. And so Phil Orr and I are friends, and I see him about once a week. We have coffee and we have prayers together and meditations and discussions. And thanks to Phil Orr, this book, The Path of Roses, got published with his help. So I'm very grateful to Fred Rogers for introducing us, and for Phil for all his help. And thank you, Al and Jean, for and Elizabeth, for your very kind words. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And likewise, Al, people should be looking at Al Fike's books, which are really gems, spiritual gems.
Thank you. Thank you, Jimbeau. Any more questions?
Martine has her hand up. You're muted, Martine.
Yeah, is that okay? You
Yeah.
hear me? Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Can I ask you a basic question about how you get the message? Do you get them by automatic writing sometimes, or is it just coming out from your mouth, or how is it going on?
I've had a few from automatic writing,
Yes,
but I'm not exactly sure how it all works, except I've been praying and meditating for many, many years, so I can kind of easily go into a place that's quiet. And, these days I pray to open up to receive divine love. And so in that state, which sometimes feels like being in a beam of light, like Star Trek, when they beam you up. Sometimes it feels really intense like that. And then I feel generally somebody standing behind me, and sometimes I can see them, but sometimes they're just bright white, and they start talking to me. And it's usually not something that I would think of, but it comes through my brain, so my vocabulary is very Jimbeau, I suppose.
so do you record it afterwards, or how do you manage to have it in your books, for instance? How do you?
Oh, so yes,
mind-
thank you, Martine. That's a good question. The vast majority of what I've received has come in the midst of prayer groups and in different places around the world when I was traveling a lot. Some are like Charlie's message, I think I got in Ireland. And in fact, one day I was going to go to see, there's a statue of Charlie in Ireland in this little village where he used to, I guess, vacation. And I thought, I'll go and see Charlie's statue. And he came through to me and he said, you can go to the village and see the statue, but you don't need to do that. I'm here right now. So that kind of thing you get, and it's just not a thought you would have, I guess. But at night, if I get a poem, I don't want to get up and try to write things down, and there's nobody there to record it except me. So I generally keep my phone near, and I turn on the notes, and I just talk into the phone. And then a week later, I discover it on my phone because I've forgotten that I've got a message.
So that's what you said when you talk about your phone on your breast. That's what happens.
Right.
On your phone. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Those of you who do channel, how do you write it down?
Regina?
Regina does a lot of channeling, gets some beautiful messages. Would you
thank
like
you,
to?
Wendy. Thank you, Wendy. Jimbo, I am so sorry to have had to miss most of your session. I'm just was looking so forward to being here, but I had another obligation. Anyway, very similar to Jimbo. They come to you whether you want them to or not sometimes, because it's necessary. Or for me, my guides will bring them to me because I hear lots of noise and I don't want to hear it all. But there are times at nighttime I usually shoo them away. My guides know that I cannot have my nighttime disrupted. It's so rare to sleep and I need to sleep. But during the daytime, I can hear them cooking with me. There's a couple of them who will come in and say, no, you need to get this recipe and you need to do this and you need to do that. And I look at the recipe and I'm often with an old book of some sort and I see who the recipe is from. And by some happenstance, it's someone several generations from the area of the prairie who used to live here. And her recipe is in the book, and that's what I'm bringing. And I'll bring it to some kind of organization or something like that, and they'll say, "Oh, this tastes just like so and so's," and that's because it was. But then there are the kinds where the automatic writing. Most of the work that is up on the Cosmic Voices are automatic. And then on my website, I'm trying to begin to try and get some of my stories itself. And I'll be reliving some of these events. And the guide will come in, or the entity that was with me at the time of the event comes back and says, "Oh, that didn't happen. That was so and so. You're talking about me, and this is what happened," and will interrupt my thought and literally give me the quote. And it's so verbatim as to what it was originally. I've got chills, and also I'm so excited because they correct my work. And they say, no, that's so and so, or no, this is what happened. Or if I'm trying to recall, and I go, "Hey guys, if you want me to write this story or your message, you better come in clear, really, really clear." And like Jimbo says, it's important to step aside, take deep breaths, and say, "This isn't about me. It's about that entity there who really has something to say to us." And boy, as soon as we get out of our own way, what they say is, and you can immediately, as Jimbo knows, you can just feel the immenseness of their love. It just resides all over you, puts you at peace. And then you can go back to worrying about whether it was right or wrong later on. But at the moment, you go, "Oh, now I need a cigarette."
Well, sometimes they come later to me and will correct something or say, I meant they were trying to tell me something. And my brain couldn't find the words, so I just kind of skipped it. And later, and then I would add it on later, and then I would write it down because they're telling me, and nobody's there. And I saw Al. Al was like nodding his head on some of this, so maybe he wants to chime in.
Yeah, I concur with these two lovely mediums that it's all about stepping aside. It's all about having an open mind. It's all for us, for Jimbo and myself. Often it's about opening up with prayer. So when you set the stage, you set the conditions. So you're inviting our celestial friends to come and speak and talk to us. So it can be, I never know what's going to come through. You just sit there with a blank mind. I think Jimbo was mentioning, I just don't want to get it wrong or, kind of not get anything. But Gina and I do 3 or 4 prayer circles, maybe 5 a week. And there's always something that comes through. And the conditions, I mean, we're human, and our own personal condition can be quite different from one day to the next. So even that doesn't seem to inhibit the spirits who want to speak. The quality of what comes through may be influenced by our own condition, or whether even physically we're not in good shape or whatever. Those things can have an effect. But generally, spirit have a lot to say. And as long as you're willing to sit there and allow them to say it, they'll do it. So it's been quite a journey. I mean, I know Jimbo's done this since what, 2019 or something?
Yes.
And I've been doing it since almost 20 years now. So there's probably 3,500 messages that have been recorded and published. And it's been quite a journey indeed.
Gina, how long have you been doing it?
Oh, I've been doing automatic writing probably since I was a child. But I didn't realize that's what all was going on until I was older, because I would get comments on my work when I was a kid going, this is above your age level. How do you know these things? And stuff. So, but I never really paid attention to that. I do want to say something about the wonderful entities that want to chat, and I'm so thrilled to be here to tell you something. The Jimbeau, this is, you probably get this, and Al, you may too. Nice to meet you. This last week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I was constantly hearing Beatles songs in my head. I never listened to the Beatles. My sisters that was older, they were older, that was their thing. And yeah, they're all great. I know all the songs, but I really haven't paid attention to the celebrity of it all, or even know that much about them. But Thursday morning, throughout my dreams, I was getting "When I'm 64" over and over and over, the whole song, and I'm going, can't I get away from these guys? And I thought, what the heck? And George Harrison is in my bedroom. Great. And I wake up and he's singing this song, and I'm going, is that your song? Like that. And I'm not really knowing, and I told him, I said, you don't come through me, you come through Jeannie, which is the other medium that Dan was talking about. And I said, that's Jeannie, you're Jeannie's medium. And he says, no, but I got a message for you. I said, well, I can't deal with it. I said, you're too big of a celebrity, I take the scientists, the ones who are celebrities in their own mind, but not these big musicians. So I'm in the shower the next day, and I'm hearing the song again, "When I'm 64." So finally, I get down, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm down at the computer going, okay, what is it? What is it? Who wrote the song? Of course, it's Paul McCartney. And I says, so why are you bringing this story to me? And it was partly because there was a message earlier in the week for Dan from his, and I'm going to say this out loud, Dan. You good for it?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. From one of his exes, who said that he needed to get cracking. And basically needed to get cracking because he had a lot of things to pass through. He's got a lot of things to gain and grow, and I can't even remember it all. And so it was all part of the "When I'm 64, will you still love me? Will you still need me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64? And then George, he wrote a message through me, and he said, this is what it's about. And he says, it's all about the love. It's about Paul McCartney. It's about how much I love the Beatles. It's the men, his family. He said it was all about the energy at which he and the four Beatles, the fours, created on stage, and what it was about. He said, we were just boys. We were just guys. He said, but the energy we had, we were tapping into the source of that intense source of love. And he said, all our songs that were of this greatness came from that same source. And he wanted, so anyway, there's a lot of message to it, and then he has more. So sometimes the evolution of a spirit happens over time. And it usually happens over time because I'm resistant to going, am I worthy of your message? I often go, am I worthy of listening to you? And he said, I'm just another guy. I'm just another, and right now I'm just another spirit. So I still question and process, and it's been years. I mean, now I've got less than I used to. Lots of my messages and stuff, all my books and writings were burned years ago by accident. So this is, it's just wonderful to be a part of this and to listen to you, Jimbeau. And I'm sorry I talked too much just now.
Well, thank you for sharing. I'd like to comment on receiving music, because when Yogananda first came to me, and I'm kind of having this argument with him, and he's saying, well, you've been telling people you receive music like a lot of musicians do. And I said, yeah, but I don't get messages. He goes, it's just you're just tuning into a different channel. That's how he put it. And he said, I sang, I wasn't very good, but I love to sing, and I praise, and I had to go look it up, and I realized he made albums. I didn't even know that. But in interviews, they would interview Bob Dylan. They said, how did you get that song? And he said, I don't know. That came to me in like 5 minutes. Paul McCartney, I just got that. I just received it. So often the really great songs, and many of the songwriters, they're mediums of a different sort. They're just channeling, they're tuning into that station. And I would say, even in my case, many times the songs come through, I just hear something, and I work with it. So you're kind of co-creating the song. But thank you for sharing that.
Very, very often that sort of thing is sort of written off as, quote, inspiration, as if we know what that means, right?
Yeah, people say it was the muse. And,
right.
People call it different stuff. But if you're receiving something, you're receiving something, I guess, is how I view it. And if you're writing heavy metal songs, maybe you're receiving some pretty different kind of stuff, right?
Different kind of. Okay. Nancy, can I get you to talk about how you receive angel messages? Because that's the sort of thing, and that's a different frequency again. Could you share something about that? How your process?
What I'd like to say first is I think that we all get messages. We all hear a message. Like, I'm going to use Regina's example that she gave. She kept hearing the When I'm 64 song. And we're puzzled by it, and any message this could be for. And I think we're puzzled by it. But when it keeps repeating, to me, that means the angels or someone in spirit is trying to get my attention to tell me something. And my style is to sit and do automatic writing or typing, because it just opens up the lane for the message to come through to me. And then having it written or typed gives me the validation that it is indeed a message. And so again, the message to me repeats until I get it, that they're trying to get a message to me, and sit and take the dictation, I call it. And it just happened this last week with something too. I was troubled by something and kept wondering, prayed about it, asked about it, and nothing seemed to be coming to me to resolve the issue, until finally I was sitting and typing something else when the angels got the message in to answer the thing that had been puzzling me with the answer. And it was like, oh, that's what that was all about. Yeah. And it usually is something that we're moving through, learning from. I believe that life is a series of lessons, and things present for us to learn those lessons from. And this was one of those examples. That's how it works for me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sometimes when, the first time I would get a message at 3 or 4 in the morning from a dead sleep, and I'm kind of grouchy and I don't really want to wake up. And I asked Hafiz, who was the first one to come through at that hour, why are you doing this at 4 o'clock in the morning? And he said, well, if you weren't so busy through the day, we'd give you one there, but this is the only time we could really reach you. And I would say, Regina's applauding. So I would say that in some sense, the poetry mostly that I get in the middle of the night, it's really, boy, very little of me at all, because I'm half asleep and I don't even know what I'm getting. And I'm just kind of mumbling into this phone. So, they've chosen to come through at a time when I'm more available, I guess is how I look at it. But like you say, I often get them several prompts. It's like a download. My friend Maureen says she calls it downloads. You start getting what they want to talk about until you actually move into to accepting the message, and getting.
Early on, the angels told me to do my talking with them at 3 o'clock in the morning. And
That's interesting.
At the time, I had a full-time job, day job, and it was hard to either stay up until 3 or set the alarm. And then I'd usually be channeling for an hour or more, and then it's 4 or 5 in the morning, and it's soon time to get ready for work. And it was wearing me out. And finally, I asked the angels if we could change the time. And they said, of course we can. But what we needed for you to learn is to become completely still and quiet so that you could hear us. And the veil is the thinnest, I've heard it put that way, on the planet at that point. And really nothing is happening at 3 a.m. So you can focus on listening to the higher realms.
I heartily agree with that assessment.
Regina, you've had a few 3 a.m. wakings. What's your attitude towards channeling in the middle of the night?
I get a little mean. I usually tell them to go away, actually, and that I will sit with them later. One entity came to me. She couldn't wait any longer, and she started pulling on my legs at about 5 in the morning. Get up, get up. It's time. Everybody's still asleep. We need to work. And literally, I was being pulled. I thought it was an earthquake at first in my dream, and she was pulling me out. She needed me getting dressed and get outside because she had to show me something. So, yeah, they're persistent if it has to be done at that moment. They are very patient if you say, I need to sleep. And I do set aside my time. I try to sit down every day just to quiet my mind, because it goes all night. I wake up exhausted at night, in the morning even, because I have been busy working all night too. And I do a lot of work at night. So it's very interesting when they actually come into my dream space, which is what George Harrison was doing. Coming into my dream space, I knew I could not ignore this, I just knew, and I don't like to ignore it. It's just that the schedule gets rather full when you're retired.
Regina,
I'm sorry, you never retired.
Regina, who was it a few years back who had you go into your kitchen and start baking and cooking certain things that were her favorites?
Maya Angelou.
Oh, Maya Angelou. Right.
Oh my gosh, we had done a wonderful session together, and I was exhausted. And sometimes, I don't know about for all the other channels and mediums or anybody who does this kind of work. I'm hungry, but I'm hungry for the wrong things, and I'm hungry for some good things. And she stepped aside, and as I'm going up into the kitchen, she goes, "Now, peach pecan shortcake." And I said, "Peach pecan shortcake." And she gave me the recipe, and it was to die for. It was absolutely to die for. And I had never made it. So I've written it down, and it's probably just a normal shortcake recipe, but it wasn't at that moment. And it was gone within an hour. So
Okay, can anybody learn to channel? Is it something that is learnable? Why is it that you all have the gift?
Well, are you asking me?
All of you.
Oh,
Let's start with you, Jimbo.
I'd say there's two sides to that coin. As somebody mentioned earlier, it might have been Nancy, everybody's a medium. Everybody is receiving stuff. You're thinking about your parents who passed away that day and they're trying to reach you and your thought comes into your mind that you wouldn't ordinarily have. And you know you've received something, or to get out of the way from a bus coming even, There's that kind of thing. And then there's some people, I think I would put myself in that category. I didn't aspire to be a medium. I didn't go to classes for it or anything like that. It just was a result of my prayer and meditation life, and Al kicking me in the butt and allowing me to be more open to it. But yeah, I think people can learn it. That's my assessment.
Why I'm asking is the Institute of Noetic Sciences at the moment is running a course on channeling. They're actually talking about the science of channeling. And I got an ad this morning about and I'm thinking, well, that's really interesting. Years and years ago, there was a book came out, I forget who wrote it, called Many Wonderful Things, about a woman under hypnosis was taken into deep hypnosis and she was really connecting with her higher self. Beautiful, beautiful work. And I'm just curious, at the moment, channeling seems to be all the rage. It's sort of, it's become very, very much, I wouldn't say in vogue, but we're hearing about all of these channels, particularly given the state of the world. There are lots and lots of people who are channeling messages on the future, on why we're going through the turmoil that we are. And I'm just curious about the mechanism of it. Is it something that anybody can learn? Is it something that you have come here to do? Have you thought about, has any of you thought about this? Al, let's start with you.
I teach a course on mediumship, divine love mediumship, to be exact. So intention is everything. What do you want to do with it? How do you want to proceed with it? How do you want your gifts to manifest? And of course, we're all unique individuals. So the form of spirit communication will be different with each one of us. I'm a trance medium. And so that's a different thing from your medium in a spiritualist church that gives messages to people, or somebody who just gets intuitive guidance about something, or they just feel in their gut, what they're going to do or what they should do. And so it is a science. Absolutely, it is a science, and there's a lot to it. And the mechanism is kind of hazy because it's of the brain, but it's not of the brain. It's not of the cerebral cortex as the main component of the channeling. It's a deeper brain mechanism that's working here, something that we had, I think, many, in our history, in our evolution. And of course, that helped us to survive the world. And now spirit are utilizing these mechanisms in the brain in order to channel in a way that it has to bubble up from these deeper places. Of course, I include the soul in that too, because the soul has all kinds of abilities and mechanisms that we don't understand or we haven't fully utilized. So for me, it starts in the soul and then it works up through these lower brain mechanisms or capacities into the consciousness, the cerebral cortex, and out. And of course, it has to pass through a lot of different filtering systems in order for the message to come through. So there aren't any pristine mediums. We're all influencing these things in our own way, using our own language, using things that are comfortable for us to utilize in order to bring through something. So you can feel as a medium, if you're sensitive enough, you can feel the personality, the individual, like George Harrison or somebody you can feel them, and they want to speak, but they have to use whatever you've got in order to speak, or give a message through some medium, excuse the pun, but some way to communicate. So yes, I think we can all communicate with spirit, but the way we do it, how it'll all kind of unfold as we progress in that communication could be very different for each individual.
Thank you, Jane.
You asked about the fact that there are more and more people that are becoming channels or
That's
mediums.
right. We're talking about channeling particularly.
When you said that, Estelle walked in so clearly in front of me, Estelle Roberts. And she said, "Good question, Wendy." But what she is telling me now, and she would like to speak more regarding that next week.
For those of you who don't know, next week Regina is going to be bringing through messages from Estelle Roberts, one of the great mediums.
And it might be either Jean or myself or whatever. I'm not quite sure. But anyway, what she's saying right now is the reason why that you're experiencing so much happening at this moment. I'm translating here just so I'm not channeling. But is that we have become a world divided more so than ever. We are noticing it as far as the Western culture more because that was where it was not really as accepted, the mediumship and channeling and stuff. But in other countries where all of this type of communication with spirits and higher beings as well as your loved ones was more of an accepted genre, that it wasn't so it isn't so pronounced. It's just part of the accepted way. You turn inward, you turn and ask your ancestors, you turn and ask those loved ones around you, you turn to your God, your source, all of those beings. And that has not changed. That has not become more prevalent. It has only become more pronounced in the Western culture because the Western culture has lost its foundation for its belief system. And the world has become so divided politically, religiously, health-wise, many, many reasons, that you have the lights beginning to congregate, and then there's the darkness. So you're really seeing the dark. You're really seeing the negative. You're really seeing the divisiveness of intentions. And you are now really experiencing the individual spirits coming forward to help those who are really searching for a stronger way to live, a brighter way. So you're seeing that, and because they are asking, there are more individuals who are asking for guidance, asking for prayer, praying for help. They are getting it. And and in order to pray, really pray with intention, you've got to go inward. You have to go inward and say, God help me. Where is God? Inward. Others believe it's out here, but you're still asking. And she's saying that asking, that request of so many light beings who know that where we are going is with a fight with darkness, is bringing more energy, more brilliance from the other side to help bring us forward. More angels, basically, more guides. Does this make sense to anybody? I'm not sure if I can explain it any further. It's just so, the images she's giving me is pretty vast, but she would like to speak more about that later. She wants you to know that is why there is this huge surge that you're experiencing, Wendy, or seeing in a public forum, that more and more people are opening up to accepting spirituality and accepting, because they know that the things that they have put their faith in, which is mostly man-made oriented and man-ruled, no longer can be trusted. So they're now seeking inward and outward and spiritual, and so they're angels.
Okay, let's hear from all of you on that. Nancy, let's start with you.
I totally agree. I mean, I think more and more people are awakening, and we're hearing about it. Whereas years ago, I think it was done privately. And I remember when I began channeling, I only told like one or two people, my brother and my best friend. I was afraid they would think I was crazy. But I think now it's coming, faster and in a bigger way. And it's all about awakening within. So I don't know if that helps anyone.
Just as a point of contrast, there's one of the podcast programs on every week, Next Level Soul, has 1.2 million subscribers, and he's bringing on channels pretty much every second week, channeling future. I mean, this is the sort of thing we're very much aware of the media, pardon me, and the number of podcast interview channels, it's just increasing exponentially.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it was COVID that generated a lot of awakening, awareness. I think particularly in the United States, where you had a lot of people dying unexpectedly. But there has been this mass revolution in terms of extraterrestrial communication, everybody's sort of looking for help. What the heck is happening in the world?
And I'll just note that in 1986, when I had I'll call it rude awakening, there weren't the resources. There weren't, I think, Kubler-Ross had a book out, and I think, I can't think of the other guy's name. Dr. Weiss had a book out, but there weren't books out there like there are now. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have Zoom groups.
That's right. I mean, we've all noticed it, I think, those of us working in the field, the exponential growth. Jimbeau, what do you have to say on this?
Well, you brought up a number of different subjects here. I'm just kind of trying to listen, but I'm aware that people have been getting information about earth changes for a long time, and my brother Al Fike has started, I don't know when he started getting it, I became aware of what he was getting in about 2015, talking about the things that are occurring right now. And even before we were in Australia at the time when the fires were raging. It's just, so what do you do, right? So this is happening, and you want to be, I think, first of all, you want your soul, your being to be in a calm, peaceful place. You want to serve others best you can. You want to stay safe and ask for guidance on how to stay safe, where to be. The country I live in is in a really horrific state of affairs from my point of view at the moment. It's just, I feel like I'm in Germany in 1939. And, it's not getting better. But, okay, so how do I deal with that? Well, I spend a lot of prayer time. I am politically active because I live on earth. I don't live in the spirit world. My soul is spiritually active. And so I want to be in a loving, graceful, transformational place, but I also want to serve the world in whatever way. So I do work on some political things. I work on, my diet and whatnot. But I don't know how much time we had left, but I wanted to really thank everybody for showing up today, and those of you that are still here for listening to me talk about my book. If you're interested in getting The Path of Roses, it is available on Amazon in US and UK and Canada and Australia and so forth. It's available on Ingram Spark in the US, which is the publisher. And I'd be thrilled if you read it and you like it and let me know. And I put it into the comments, I put two websites where you can connect with me. I'm always happy to have prayers with people or to engage with them if I'm available. So I really thank you. God bless you all for coming today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimbeau. Al.
Thank you, Jimbeau, for being so eloquent. And yes, it was a wonderful talk. And I'm glad that I could make it. What I have gathered with these conversations, I'm going to bring into my talk in a couple of weeks, and we can go further into some of these issues and some of these questions when we're together in a couple of weeks. And I'm sure Regina is going to probably extrapolate too on some of this stuff. So yeah, channeling is here. It's always been here, and people are waking up to it. The possibility of those resources that are available to humanity, rather than listening to our leaders, which seem to be wanting to jump off a cliff these days. We want something a little deeper and a little wiser, and so that's, I think, why people are going towards these things, because when you read these messages and you take it in, you see these things make sense. There's wisdom there. There's something that could guide me in my life there. So, yeah, there's lots of avenues and opportunities to listen and to have and to be in your own place, communicating with spirit. So, yeah, it's a big wide world out there that needs to be explored.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
Thanks, Al.
Jimbeau, I'm wondering if you could close this meeting for us, perhaps with a prayer, perhaps with something, an expression of thanks. I think we're all feeling very moved
Oh,
by
thank you.
the energy that has been generated here today.
Well, I'm happy to have a prayer. I don't know if I'm in a rapport state of getting anything for everyone, but I'm happy to say a
prayer is
prayer.
fine, just a prayer of thanks.
Okay. Dear God, most loving Creator, we all come together today to receive guidance, some real insight, some truth that will touch our souls, that will penetrate the material world and lift us into the ascendancy of your love. We all wish to be free, to be happy, to feel grace. We all wish to choose what is best for all. And we all choose love. In this moment, we ask you to open up our souls to the great infilling and inflowing of your love. May your Holy Spirit bring that love into each of our souls. That we may be transformed from the image to the very substance. to be at one with you. May we be still and allow your great love to dissolve the walls we have built to protect our hearts. May those walls dissolve in love, in forgiveness of ourselves and of others. May we be channels of your light and love in this world, so in need. We also ask that those angels who watch over the earth will bless those in need, the homeless, the hungry, the abused, those who are victims of war, the millions of refugees on earth. Please guide them and care for them as you have cared for us. We ask for your ongoing protection and the guidance of the celestial angels, but above all, that your love may touch our souls and transform us from the mortal to the divine, from the human to the angelic. Most loving Creator, we thank you for this gift, for this time with these beautiful, beautiful souls, these beautiful hearts, seekers of truth and love. We thank you. Amen.
Thank you, Jimbeau, and thank you, everybody. Thank you for all of you for being here.
Thank you.
We all
Thanks,
feel,
everyone. God bless you
I
all.
think we all feel the energy. Thank you, Jimbeau.